There's a moment in every courtroom when everything shifts. For me, that moment came when the one person I never expected took the stand and told the truth that changed everything. My name is Claire Whitmore. What happened in that courtroom shocked everyone, including me. You'll understand soon enough. I sat in that cold courtroom in downtown San Diego, clutching the edge of my chair like it was the only thing keeping me upright. From the outside, I probably looked composed, sleek navy blazer, hair pulled tight in a bun, hands folded neatly in my lap. But inside? I was unraveling. Across the aisle sat David. My ex-husband. The man I once trusted with everything, now trying to rip my son away from me. He looked like he always did, confident, calm, polished. Like he was running a board meeting instead of a custody battle. Beside him sat her. Vanessa. Legs crossed, nails perfect, not a strand of her honey blonde hair out of place. She looked at me once, just once, and smiled. That tight, knowing smile that said we've already won. My lawyer leaned in. Claire, he whispered, remember, no reactions. Let them talk themselves into a hole. I nodded, but my throat was too dry to speak. I never imagined it would come to this. When David left, I thought that was the worst it could get. The betrayal, the silence, the way he disappeared from our lives only to resurface with someone younger, shinier. I'd already mourned the end of our marriage. But nothing could have prepared me for this, sitting in court, listening to lies poured into official records, as if my love for Ethan wasn't real. As if being his mother wasn't the very thing keeping me breathing. David hadn't just filed for joint custody. He wanted full custody. Sole legal and physical custody. No weekends, no holidays, no decision-making. Just gone. Erased. Like I was never part of Ethan's life. The courtroom buzzed with low murmurs, attorneys flipping through folders, clerks typing away, someone coughing softly. And in the middle of it, I felt like I was drowning. Every second dragged like an hour. The hearing hadn't even started, and already I could feel the weight of judgment pressing on my chest. I glanced at the judge's bench. Still empty. The door to the chambers was closed, but I knew any moment now it would open. I breathed in through my nose, slow and deep, trying to keep the panic from bubbling to the surface. Do not let him see you break, I reminded myself. Not here. Not today. David leaned in toward Vanessa, whispered something, and she laughed. Laughed. Like this was a game. Like this wasn't about the 8-year-old boy who still asked for his bedtime story every night. Who still cried when he skinned his knee and called out for me, not her. I clenched my jaw so hard it hurt. 3 rows behind me sat my mom. Her hands were clasped tightly in her lap, knuckles white. She met my eyes, gave me a single nod. We'd both been through hell these past months, and she never once let go of me. She was the only person who saw how I barely slept, how I'd wake up in the middle of the night and check Ethan's room even though he was asleep in the next one. She knew what this fight was costing me. And David? He knew too. That was the point. The bailiff stood and called out, "All rise." Please subscribe to the Revenge Bay channel and leave your feedback in the comments. Don't miss a single exciting story. Thank you very much, and I will continue. Everyone shuffled to their feet. The judge entered, a tall woman with gray curls pulled back, eyes sharp as glass. She didn't smile. Didn't glance around. Just sat, adjusted her robe, and looked down at the file in front of her. This is case number C-2019-40578, she began. David Whitmore versus Claire Whitmore, custody hearing for minor child Ethan Whitmore. Counsel, are you ready to proceed? David's attorney stood first. Yes, Your Honor. My lawyer stood next. Yes, Your Honor. The judge looked directly at me. Ms. Whitmore, I trust you understand the seriousness of today's proceedings. Yes, Your Honor, I said, and my voice, thank God, didn't shake. All right, she said. Let's begin. And just like that, it was real. David wasn't always like this. I wish I could say I saw it coming, that the red flags were there from the start, waving in my face like a warning I refused to read. But I didn't. He was charming, attentive, brilliant in that effortless, terrifying way. He made people listen when he talked. He made me feel seen. Chosen. We met in Chicago at a coffee shop during a snowstorm. He bought my latte because I'd forgotten my wallet, then made me laugh with some offhand comment about fate. 2 months later, we moved in together. A year after that, we got married under a sycamore tree in his parents' backyard. I wore a lace dress and he cried during the vows. For a while, life was good. He pushed me to go after my career in social work. He made dinner when I worked late. He kissed my forehead every morning, and I thought, this is what love is supposed to be. Then came Ethan. My entire world shifted the moment I held him. Everything else faded, work, bills, even David sometimes. That tiny boy with wide brown eyes and the softest hands became my purpose. I didn't care that I was exhausted or that my body ached in places it never had before. I was a mother. And it mattered. David seemed happy too at first. He painted Ethan's nursery, stayed up with me during midnight feedings, took 1,000 pictures. But something shifted after Ethan turned 2. David became colder. Distant. At first, I blamed work. He'd started traveling more, chasing new contracts, networking with people who wore Italian suits and smelled like power. But slowly, it became clear that it wasn't work. It was me. I remember one night, Ethan had a fever. I was pacing the hallway with him in my arms, whispering lullabies while trying not to cry. David came out of the bedroom, looked at me for all of 3 seconds, and said, "Can't you just put him down and let him cry it out? You're babying him." That was the first time I saw the contempt. It crept in slowly after that. Little sighs when I asked for help. Eye rolls when I said I was tired. Silence at dinner replaced with endless scrolling on his phone. I'd ask what was wrong and he'd say, "Nothing. You're imagining things." Then came Vanessa. I didn't know her name at first. Just the scent, vanilla and something expensive on his shirt. The late nights. The quick flips of his screen when I walked into the room. The way he started smiling at his phone again, like he used to smile at me. When I finally asked him point blank, he didn't even deny it. He just said, "Claire, I haven't been happy for a long time. We've both changed." Changed. As if infidelity was evolution. He moved out the next week. Packed his leather briefcase, his watch collection, his cologne. Left behind Ethan's bedtime routine, our family dinners, the toy train he promised to fix but never did. He moved into a high-rise downtown. A gym, a pool, concierge service. Everything shiny and new. Including her. I saw Vanessa for the first time when David picked up Ethan one Saturday. She stayed in the car, wearing oversized sunglasses, tapping her nails on the steering wheel. Ethan asked who she was. David said, "A friend." That friend was living with him 2 months later. And now? Now she sits in court beside him, whispering in his ear, backing him in his fight to prove I'm unfit. That I'm unstable. That I'm dangerous. But I know the truth. I was the one who stayed. Who soothed every nightmare. Who held Ethan's tiny hand through doctor's appointments and scraped knees and potty training. Who held this family together long after it had already fallen apart. And if they think they can take him from me, they have no idea who I've become. The papers came on a Wednesday. I remember because it was laundry day and Ethan had spilled chocolate milk on the couch. I was elbow deep in cushions and Clorox wipes when the doorbell rang. A man in a gray polo handed me an envelope and said, "Claire Whitmore?" I nodded. "You've been served." He walked away before I even opened it. My hands were shaking before I unfolded the first page. At first, I didn't understand what I was looking at. Legal jargon. Case numbers. San Diego County Superior Court. But one sentence burned through the rest. Petitioner seeks sole legal and physical custody of the minor child, Ethan Whitmore. I sat down on the armrest, my knees refusing to hold me. Sole custody. David wasn't just trying to change weekends or pickup times. He wanted everything. No co-parenting. No shared decisions. Just gone. Me stripped of motherhood like it was a coat he no longer liked on me. Ethan ran into the room holding a toy dinosaur. "Mom, look. T-Rex is eating the car." I forced a smile. That's terrifying. He laughed and ran off again. I stared at the paper, bile rising in my throat. I called David. Straight to voicemail. Texted him, "What is this?" No reply. By that evening, I was pacing the living room, clutching my phone like it might offer an answer. My mom sat silently at the kitchen table, reading the petition line by line with her glasses perched on her nose. She didn't speak until she reached the last page. "He says you're emotionally unstable," she whispered. I blinked. "What?" She passed me the paper. "There. Right there. He claims you've exhibited depressive behaviors, irrational decisions, and patterns of emotional distress that make you unfit to parent." I felt like I'd been slapped. I'd struggled, sure. After he left, there were days I didn't want to get out of bed. I cried in the shower more times than I could count. But I never let Ethan see that. Never skipped a school event, never forgot his lunchbox, never once put my pain above his needs. David knew that. And he twisted it anyway. The next day, I found a lawyer. He wasn't flashy. No downtown skyscraper office or assistant in a pantsuit. His name was Mark Holloway, a family law attorney in La Mesa, recommended by my friend Jenna, who'd gone through a nasty divorce herself. Mark listened as I unraveled the last year of my life, the breakup, the new woman, the whispered accusations. He didn't interrupt once. When I finished, he leaned back in his chair and said, "We're not just fighting a custody case. We're fighting a narrative. And they're already painting you as the villain." "I'm not unstable," I said, too quickly. He held up a hand. "I believe you. But court doesn't run on belief. It runs on evidence." I exhaled, trying not to break down again. "Claire," he continued, "this will get ugly. You'll hear things that hurt. Things that aren't true. But if you want to fight this, really fight, we need to go in strong." I nodded. "I'll do whatever it takes." From that moment on, my life turned into strategy sessions, therapy logs, character witnesses, parenting classes, anything that could build a case. Mark warned me that David had already hired a high-profile attorney who specialized in high-conflict custody disputes. Of course he had. David always played to win. The courtroom felt colder on the first official day of testimony. Maybe it was just me. Maybe it was nerves. Or maybe it was the way David walked in with that same confident stride, wearing a custom navy suit and a smugness he didn't even try to hide. Vanessa followed closely, her heels clicking like punctuation marks on the tile floor. They looked polished, rehearsed, like they belonged on the cover of a magazine about winning at divorce. Mark leaned in and whispered, "Stay focused. They're performing. We're telling the truth." I nodded, but my stomach flipped. The judge called the room to order, then turned to David's attorney, a tall man with perfect hair and a colder smile. "Mr. Rowland, you may begin." He rose slowly, as if savoring the moment. "Your Honor," he began, "we are here today because my client is gravely concerned for the well-being of his son Ethan. This is not a matter of bitterness or revenge. It is about a father stepping in to protect his child from an environment that has become emotionally volatile and potentially harmful." My ears rang. "Claire Whitmore is not a bad person," he continued, voice full of syrupy concern. "But since the dissolution of their marriage, she has struggled with mental health. These are facts. And we will present documentation, expert opinions, and eyewitness testimony to support this. Lies. But polished lies. Weaponized compassion." He continued, citing moments from our past like footnotes in a courtroom drama. "Times I cried at school pickup, never mind I'd just worked a 10-hour shift and gotten a call that my aunt had died. Times I forgot to send Ethan with his lunch, once, and he ate mine. Times I looked disheveled, according to a neighbor who didn't even know my name. It felt like death by 1,000 paper cuts." Then came the witnesses. The first was David's coworker, a woman I'd met maybe 3 times in my life. She testified that David always seemed worried about Ethan, that he'd told her he wasn't sure Claire could cope. She smiled sympathetically at me as if that softened the blade. Next was Ethan's former preschool teacher from 2 years ago. She said I had once arrived late and looked flustered and overwhelmed. And I sat there, hands folded, lips tight, reminding myself, don't react. Don't flinch. Don't give them anything. But the real gut punch came when they played a voicemail. It was from one of my lowest nights. Ethan had a fever, I hadn't slept, and David wasn't answering. I'd called and left a message, exhausted, scared, angry. David, this is ridiculous. He's sick and you're nowhere. I can't do this alone all the time. You don't get to disappear and still pretend you're the better parent. Call me back. The courtroom went silent. Mr. Rowland paused dramatically. Is this the voice of a stable co-parent? Mark stood instantly. Objection. Argumentative. Sustained, the judge said, but the damage was done. The words hung in the air like smoke. David never looked at me. Not once. Just sat there, jaw set, hands clasped, a man playing the role of the concerned father to perfection. And Vanessa? She smiled slightly. That same smile from before. That same you're losing smirk. By the time the judge called for recess, I felt hollowed out. Mark walked me out into the hallway and handed me a bottle of water. They're good, I said quietly. They're polished, he corrected. But they don't have you. We haven't even started our side yet. When David took the stand, the courtroom shifted. It wasn't just his posture or the way he smoothed his suit jacket before sitting. It was the silence. The way everyone leaned in, the judge, the attorneys, even the damn clerk stopped typing. David had always known how to hold a room. I used to admire it. Now it made my skin crawl. He placed his hand on the Bible, swore to tell the truth, the whole truth and nothing but it. And then he began. I never imagined we'd end up here, he said softly. Claire and I, we had a good marriage once. We built a life together. We have a beautiful son. And I'll always be grateful for that. He paused, looked down. Like it hurt him to say it. But over the past couple of years I've watched Claire change. And I've tried to support her, I really have, but it became clear that something shifted after the divorce. Her moods. Her ability to manage stress. Her decision-making. His voice cracked just enough to sound believable. I'm not here to attack her character. I'm here because I'm scared for my son. Ethan told me he worries about his mom. That she cries a lot. That she forgets things. That she sleeps through his alarms. I gripped the edge of the table. Lies. Exaggerations. Twisted versions of real moments. Do you believe she's a danger to him? Mr. Rowland asked. David hesitated. Just enough to make it look like he hated the question. I think she's overwhelmed. I think she's doing her best. But I don't think her best is enough right now. Right now. That little phrase hung in the air like a trap. Like he was pretending this wasn't permanent, just temporary. Just until she got better. How would sole custody benefit Ethan? Rowland asked. David turned slightly toward the judge. His voice softened. I can give him structure. Stability. I live in a secure building, I work from home 3 days a week, I have help. Vanessa's a constant presence and she loves Ethan. He deserves consistency. He deserves peace. Vanessa blinked slowly like she'd been waiting for her name. And if the court allowed shared custody? Roland précède. David sighed. Then I'd still worry. I'd worry every night he wasn't with me. He looked down again, eyes glassy. I don't know if they were fake tears or real. Honestly, I didn't care. What killed me wasn't that he was pretending, it was that he believed it. Or had convinced himself it was true. That he was the safe one. The rational one. The hero. Mr. Rowland finished his direct examination, and the judge turned to Mark. Mr. Holloway, your witness. Mark stood calmly, buttoned his jacket. Thank you, Your Honor. He approached slowly, holding nothing but a notepad. Mr. Whitmore, he began, you mentioned concern for your son's safety. When exactly did that concern begin? David didn't flinch. After the divorce. So not during the years Claire raised him while you were traveling for work? No. Not when she stayed home with him for 2 years while you launched your consulting firm? David's jaw twitched. That was different. How so? I was still involved. Emotionally present. Mark gave a polite nod. And yet, after moving out, you introduced Ethan to a new partner within 2 months. Is that what you'd call emotional consistency? David blinked. Vanessa was a natural part of my life. But not part of Ethan's. David shifted in his seat. She is now. Mark paused. Let the silence work for us. One last question, Mr. Whitmore. You said Claire's best isn't enough. Do you think a single parent who's heartbroken, overwhelmed, and human is automatically unfit to love their child? David didn't answer right away. He looked down. Then, finally, no. Not automatically. Good, Mark said quietly. Because that's what parenting is. Hard. Messy. Imperfect. The judge nodded slowly as if storing that moment. By the time Mark began cross-examining David, the room had already turned cold. When Mark pressed him, David didn't snap. He adjusted. He sidestepped questions with just enough humility to seem genuine. Would you say you were emotionally present during the final year of the marriage? I tried to be, David answered. But Claire wasn't open. She withdrew. And you responded by leaving her for someone else within 3 months? I didn't leave for anyone. The marriage was already over. He looked toward the judge with something like remorse in his eyes. God, he was good. Then came the character witnesses. More people from his life. Co-workers. Friends. One even claimed I'd yelled at Ethan in a parking lot, an incident that never happened, and yet sounded real enough in their telling that even I started questioning my memory. She looked overwhelmed, the woman had said. Unstable. Overwhelmed. That word kept coming up. As if motherhood wasn't a job that overwhelmed every single person on the planet. Mark did his best to cut through it. Did you see her hit the child? Neglect him? Abandon him? No. So what you saw was a tired mom in a public space. The woman hesitated. Yes. But the damage was done. The word unstable had hit the air, and no matter how hard we worked, we couldn't vacuum it back in. I sat, fists clenched in my lap, as more people twisted little truths into damaging half-lies. There were no monsters on their side, just polite, reasonable professionals presenting me as emotionally fragile, inconsistent, not dangerous, but not ideal. That's how they were going to win. Not by proving I was unfit. By proving he was the better option. It was terrifyingly effective. At one point during a break, I went into the restroom, locked myself in a stall, and leaned my forehead against the door. I could hear women chatting near the sink. I recognized one of them. She was Roland's paralegal. She looks tired, one of them said. Wouldn't you be? I mean, poor thing. But still, he has such a solid case. Vanessa too. She's so polished. I felt the burn in my throat. Swallowed it down. When I stepped back into the hallway, Mark was waiting. He handed me a tissue before I asked. We're holding, he said gently. Barely. But we are. Barely's not good enough, I whispered. He didn't answer right away. Then he said, we still have your testimony. And if you're open to it, one last card. I looked at him. What kind of card? A witness, he said. One we haven't mentioned yet. I narrowed my eyes. Who? Mark looked past me toward the courtroom doors. Not yet. I need to confirm something first. The courtroom emptied out for lunch, but I couldn't eat. I sat in the hallway outside Department 4B, my back against the cool beige wall, knees pulled up slightly, hands clasped tight. The courthouse smelled like floor wax and overworked coffee machines. Voices echoed in the corridor, lawyers, clerks, murmurs of other lives falling apart behind heavy wooden doors. Mark sat beside me, calm as ever, flipping through his tablet. You're doing better than you think, he said without looking up. I laughed. It came out harsh and dry. Feels like I'm getting slaughtered. You're not. They built a case around performance. We built one around truth. Is that enough? He finally looked at me. Maybe. Maybe not. Great. He closed the tablet and leaned forward. Look, Claire, we both knew this was going to get ugly. They've painted you into a corner, one you don't deserve to be in. But we have a move. Something they won't see coming. I turned to him slowly. You're talking about that witness. He nodded once. I want to know who it is. You will, he said. When the time is right. That's not good enough. He studied me for a long moment. I'm protecting you. And the case. I stared at him, trying to decide if I could trust him on this. I wanted to scream, to demand answers. But deep down I knew if he was keeping this from me, it meant the move was high stakes. Dangerous even. And it meant they definitely wouldn't expect it. Is it going to help? I asked finally. If it goes the way I think it will, it's going to change everything. I exhaled, slow and shaky. A bailiff passed by and nodded toward the courtroom. Back in 10. Mark stood and straightened his suit jacket. Stay grounded. Don't let them get in your head. I need you present. I followed him back into the courtroom, my heart hammering. David was already at his table, whispering with Roland. Vanessa sat perfectly still beside them, her expression unreadable, eyes forward. She hadn't looked at me all morning. As I took my seat, I could feel it, the shift. The electricity in the air, like the seconds before a thunderstorm. David looked relaxed. Confident. Like a man preparing to accept his victory with practiced humility. He didn't know what was coming. Not yet. The judge entered and called the session back to order. Mr. Holloway, she said, any additional witnesses before closing arguments? Mark rose, buttoned his jacket. His voice was calm, crisp. Yes, Your Honor. We'd like to call one final witness to the stand. David's head turned slightly. Curious. Mildly surprised. Mark paused. Just for a beat. We call. A beat longer. Our final witness. A stir moved through the courtroom. A whisper. Chairs creaked. David glanced at Roland. Confusion flickered across his face. Mark didn't fill the silence. He didn't have to. Because the moment the door opened at the back of the courtroom and the witness stepped through, David's entire body changed. His face paled. He sat back too fast, knocking a pen from the table. Vanessa walked toward the witness stand like someone on the edge of a dream, steady but slow. Like her body knew where to go, but her heart hadn't caught up. I hadn't seen Vanessa look nervous before. Not once. But now? Her face was tight, her hands clutched around each other, and her eyes kept flicking toward David like she was silently begging him to say something, anything. He didn't move. The room was so still you could have heard a cough from 3 doors down. The judge watched her carefully. Even the court reporter had stopped typing for a second. Vanessa raised her right hand, swore to tell the truth, and sat down. I felt like I couldn't breathe. Mark approached the stand slowly, not a hint of drama in his voice. Just calm, cool, methodical precision. Miss Sanders, you've been in a relationship with Mr. Whitmore for approximately 2 years. Is that correct? She nodded. Yes. And during that time you've lived together? Co-parented Ethan? Another nod. Yes. And you've had conversations with Mr. Whitmore about Claire, about her mental state, her parenting? Her throat bobbed. Yes. Mark stepped slightly closer. I'd like you to speak plainly. Have you always been honest with David about what you observed? The air shifted. She blinked. Once. Twice. Then she said it. No. Whispers rose behind me. Even the judge leaned forward slightly. Mark didn't let her pause. What weren't you honest about? Vanessa's hands trembled. She folded them tighter in her lap. David was angry. After the divorce. He hated how it made him look. He said she walked away with their son and everyone pitied her. Her voice cracked. He wanted to take something back. And did you help him do that? Tears were forming now. At first, I just listened. Then I started saying what he needed to hear. That Claire was unstable. That Ethan seemed anxious. That she looked off. Even when it wasn't true. Were any of those things true? She shook her head. No. She was always attentive. Kind. Patient. Ethan loves her. I didn't want to lose David. David stood suddenly. Your Honor, Sit down, Mr. Whitmore, the judge said sharply. Vanessa didn't look at him. I told him she was slipping. That she cried a lot. That Ethan was scared around her. But it wasn't true. None of it. Claire was just a mom going through hell. And I helped turn that into something it wasn't. Mark stayed still for a moment. Why are you telling the truth now? She finally looked at me. Because I thought if I helped him destroy her, he'd love me more. But all I did was make it worse. And I can't live with it anymore. The courtroom was dead silent. David looked like he'd been hollowed out from the inside. No more control. No more mask. Just shock, pure and naked. He sat down like his knees gave out. His lawyer's face was stone. Mark turned to the judge. Your Honor, we request that the court consider this testimony as material to the validity of all prior statements submitted by the petitioner. The judge held up a hand. It will be considered. I couldn't feel my hands. Vanessa stepped down from the stand. As she passed me, she slowed. Our eyes met. I'd never seen David speechless. Not in 12 years of knowing him. Not when he was caught lying about money. Not when he told me about Vanessa. Not even when I served him with divorce papers. He always had something to say, some polished line, some sharp retort, some version of the truth that bent just enough to serve him. But now? He was unraveling right in front of me. The judge hadn't even recessed yet. The courtroom was still processing what Vanessa had said. People shifting in their seats, trying not to stare at David like he was a train wreck they couldn't look away from. But I didn't look away. Not for a second. David sat stiffly, jaw tight, hands gripping the edge of the table like he could hold on to control by sheer force. His lawyer leaned in, whispered something. David didn't answer. His face was pale, his breathing shallow. Then, suddenly, he stood. Your Honor, he said, voice shaking, I need to respond to that testimony. Mr. Whitmore, the judge warned, you are not to address the court without counsel. He ignored her. She's lying, he snapped, jabbing a finger toward the door Vanessa had exited through. She's trying to ruin me because I ended things last week. She knew it was coming. She's bitter. Mark stood calmly. Objection. Relevance. Sustained, the judge said. Mr. Whitmore, sit down. But David was beyond listening. She's unstable. They're both unstable. Claire's playing the victim and Vanessa's helping her because she couldn't keep me. This is a setup. There it was. The crack. The break. The real David. No more composed father. No more concerned ex-husband. Just a man spiraling under pressure, his narrative shattered, and his ego bleeding out in front of everyone. Mr. Whitmore, the judge said, voice firm now, this outburst is not helping your case. He turned to the judge, his voice rising. You don't know her like I do. Claire's manipulative. She plays innocent, but she's cold. Vindictive. My lawyer didn't say a word. He didn't need to. David was doing our job for us. A bailiff stepped forward, just slightly, like a shadow at the edge of the drama. David saw it. He hesitated. Then dropped into his chair, muttering under his breath. The judge took a long pause before speaking. I will be reviewing all testimony, including Ms. Sanders' sworn statement, and I will determine how this impacts the credibility of the petitioner's claims. But let me be perfectly clear, this court does not tolerate coercion, deception, or theatrics. She looked directly at David. Further disruption will result in sanctions. David didn't respond. For the rest of the hearing, he said nothing. Didn't look at me. Didn't look at anyone. Vanessa had detonated his carefully crafted story. And I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel victorious. I felt free. It took 6 weeks to get the ruling. 6 weeks of waiting. Of trying to live like my world wasn't hanging in limbo. Every morning I packed Ethan's lunch, walked him to school, smiled at the teachers. Every night I tucked him in, kissed his forehead, and told him I loved him more than the stars. I held it together because that's what moms do, even when the ground under them feels paper thin. Mark called me just after lunch on a Thursday. "It's in," he said. "The judge filed this morning." I didn't ask what the decision was. I couldn't. I just sat down on the kitchen floor and stared at the same cracked tile I'd been meaning to replace for 2 years. "You won, Claire," he said gently. "Full legal and physical custody. Sole decision-making. Visitation at your discretion. Supervised if at all." I closed my eyes and let the tears come. Not loud. Not explosive. Just quiet. Relief pouring out after months of holding everything in. When I finally spoke, all I could whisper was, "Thank you." "You earned it," Mark said. "Every damn bit of it." The final court date was procedural. No drama, no witnesses, no fireworks. David didn't speak. He barely looked up when the judge confirmed the custody order and signed it into record. I sat still, heart steady. Ethan was safe. That was all that mattered now. Vanessa didn't come. I hadn't seen her since the day she testified. Word was she moved out of David's apartment a few days later. Quietly. No forwarding address. Just gone. After the hearing, David walked past me in the hallway, flanked by his attorney. He looked small. Not angry. Not defeated. Just empty. Like someone whose reflection had finally turned on him. He didn't say a word. And neither did I. He wasn't mine to fight anymore. Ethan and I took a road trip that weekend. Nothing fancy, just north to Monterey. We stayed at a little inn with blue shutters and walked along the coast, collecting sea glass and pretending it had magic in it. He laughed until he hiccuped. I hadn't heard that sound in months. One night, as we sat on the sand watching the sun melt into the ocean, he leaned against me and said, "Mom? Are we okay now?" I wrapped my arm around him. "Yeah, baby. We are." And now I would like to hear your opinion. Who really did wrong in this story? Write your versions in the comments. Do you want your story to be broadcast on the channel? Write it in the comments or send it to me at the email address listed in the channel description. I will definitely voice the most interesting ones.